Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined by my victim and co-host,
Alex Dantino.
Oh, okay, I'm excited. I've been waiting. Woo! All right, maybe not the most Candyman intro I expected, but hey, we're doing it. We're on the fly. I'm so fucking excited. I've been wanting to do Candyman for 200 plus episodes, and now we're here. All right, guys, before we get started, a quick moment for business. Please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show, especially if that happens to be Apple Podcast app. That helps us out so much, guys. We appreciate all of you that have been doing that. Thank you so much. This October deep dive has gone exceptionally well, so we wanted to extend an extra thank you for everyone for downloading so many shows with us, watching all these movies with us, and making it super fun. Thank you, guys.
Home stretch here.
Home stretch. We're almost there. You guys can see our faces and hear our voices on our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. Some cool new stuff over there we're working on. Some really fun stuff that hopefully we'll start rolling out soon. So make sure to subscribe over there, Nerd Alchemist. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, or find us on any social media site you're on: Facebook, Instagram at Film Alchemist Pod, Twitter at Film_Alchemist. You can get a hold of us, reach out to us there. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. New, old, double feature, guest host. Theme for a whole month. Every December, we stuff your stocking. That is an all listener selection month. So it's a great time to get in early and get in now with your best
I already
choices.
got one.
Yeah,
Did I tell you that?
Did you get one?
I got one.
Holy shit, I'm excited.
From listener Mackie Smith.
Oh, nice. Yeah, usually we can't get to all of them every year, so make sure you get in with good ones. It seems like this year we're going to get a lot more than normal, so be prepared, guys. We're excited for that. But yeah, we just like hearing from you. All right, enough business. So Candyman is so near and dear to my heart. For those of you who know me or know this show, I fucking adore Clive Barker. His kind of vision of how he sees and tells horror, I feel like is probably the closest to my soul of any filmmaker or writer. There's something always very depraved but emotionally resonant with him, right? I feel so much empathy with Clive Barker stories, which feels weird because on the surface I think people just see the gore and the body horror and they think it's very devoid of emotion. I think Candyman, especially on film, is probably the best version of what he does so well. I'm always shocked that Candyman isn't always mentioned in the pantheon of the great horror movie villains. I'm surprised that it just kind of floundered as it did. We'll get to all that, man. I just wanted to say how much I fucking love Candyman. Alex, your opening thoughts on Candyman.
I also love Candyman. This actually is a movie I saw. It's funny, earlier in the month we talked with our friend Rob Parr about House of a Thousand Corpses. The way he saw House of a Thousand Corpses the first time is eerily similar to the way I saw Candyman for the first time. This neighborhood that was filled with rich people that Rob and I grew up near, this is the exact same setting I saw Candyman. Like I went over to this girl I was dating's house, and she was rich, and she lived in this rich neighborhood, and she loved Candyman. I'm like, I'd never seen it. And we sat down and watched it and just got my fucking hair blown back. It was unbelievable experience. But like as I got older, I watched it again and again, and because the first time you watch it, for me, like when I was younger, I'm a jackass. So like I've literally watched it, I was like, whoa, that was scary. And then I watched it again and again, and like once you start like spending time like actually paying attention to what's going on and learning a little bit more about it itself, the movie's resonance and meaning is so much deeper and so much more interesting. And again, Tony Todd just gives like an all-timer performance. Like I cannot understand why he's not in the pantheon. I mean, he is, right? For me, he is.
He is. I think most people who are film buffs or especially horror buffs, I think almost every one of them I know really cherishes Candyman. I think the thing with Candyman is they just never made that big crossover splash. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's just
I don't either.
It's so much more intimate than other horror that maybe it's just harder for people. Because one of the things that strikes me as I get older, right? The Man with the Hook and the Bees, all that shit is awesome. The voice, the stunning look of him, all of that is fucking cool, right? The mural on the wall. When you watch it and you're young, you're very captivated, you know, very much like our leads in this film. You're just like, wow, what is this? I want to get closer. As I get older and older, you just find so much depth in this movie. And the thing that I found so strange is, I guess today when I was watching it, I was struck so much by the yearning of Candyman. And I think that separates him a lot, right? So this isn't Freddy saying, you know, it's prime time, bitch, you know, and just fucking smashing someone through a TV. His kind of running ghostly narration through the film, you know, be my victim, right? You know, why do you want to live and do like his pulling her deeper and deeper into the world isn't a place of just straight up abuse, right? Like a lot of these horror movies are. Right. Jason, you walked into my camp. Michael, you have some of my genetics and whatever, you know, Freddy, your parents burned me alive. They all have these things. Candyman is just a little different, right? Because it starts off with this very set rule, right? Don't say his name 5 times in a mirror. If I'm being honest, even as an adult man right now, I still to this day have never done it, nor would I. You know?
Absolutely
it's
not.
One of those things
I
that's
I can emphatically say I've never done it.
Right.
100%.
And one of the funny things in this film is how much they start violating that rule as we go on. And it becomes really fucking interesting, right? So this thing of Candyman haunting those who are pulling him in, it's a really different perspective than most of these major horror franchises. You have to call him out, right? He has to be summoned by us, right? And it really struck me weird this week, too, because I watched that American Crime documentary, which if you haven't seen it on Netflix, it's really fascinating. It's that guy who killed his family in Colorado, but it's all done through, like, actual footage, so you see him lying in real time and this and that.
Yeah.
It's fucking wild, right?
Andrea watched it, and she couldn't sleep. That was like...
Well, yeah, Amy ran out of the room. She's like, his daughter's on. And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I get it. It sucks, but it made me think of Candyman in a way, the way that we dredge up his horrendous story and his abuse and his murder as our fucking entertainment, as our thesis papers, as our fun ghost story. Right. And so us mucking around in that, we have to bring him out.
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing that makes it something that I noted this viewing and I had never like paid attention to before is, and maybe it's just because we're almost through the month and we've watched, to be fair, like, you know, we've watched a lot of this out of order and like we've been backlogging since June. But the one thing that I've noticed, particularly running up to like this episode, is I think of all the movies we've watched this month, like, I don't know why, but I feel like this one's the most cinematic. It's weird to say that way, but this movie does, like, Bernard Rose does such a good job of making things seem, I'm not sure, like, the eeriness of it all is the thing that I think I've noted the most. And again, we've talked a lot of like the critique of like, oh, like Haddonfield as a character and that kind of shit. Like, you and I have talked about that, and that's kind of a cop out a lot of the time. But I feel like much more than any other movie we've watched this month, location is so important to Candyman and such an important part of the movie itself. And it's not necessarily Chicago, but Cabrini Green. Like, my brother lived in Chicago for a long time. You live in Indiana, you're close as well.
We got lost in Cabrini Green once, and it was the first time I ever saw my dad be actually scared.
I mean, that's
he literally
exactly
like locked the door and was like, "Oh my god!" He like woke us up. We were like going to a Cubs game, and he's like slamming the gas like flying because he was terrified of being near Cabrini Green. And this was right around the same age that I found Candyman. So yeah, I get what you're saying on that.
It's really fascinating, though. Like, the things that I noticed the most this time were these, like, huge, wide open overhead shots of neighborhood, Chicago in general. And, like, just the scope of the movie itself is so much bigger this time because of, like, the thing I noted the most was just the completely different lives that Helen is living versus when she, like, goes to Cabrini Green. All we're seeing is, that bathroom, or where like one of my all-time favorite set pieces, which is the mouth. It's just like one of the coolest set pieces I've ever seen in a fucking horror movie. But like, and then you go back to her house, or you go back to that place that they all have dinner at after she meets up with Jake. It's just like this fascinating, not Jake, sorry, that happened later. But like, it's just this really fascinating, dichotomy of like wood paneling and all this stuff. And it's very like, again, the racial component of this movie is really important, and I never like dawned on me when I was younger. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the year we're in, but this time particularly, I was noting it much more than ever before. It was really fascinating.
Well, when you're a child, I think we still see the world as just good and bad, right? I don't think we have, like, I don't think my kids have any concept of what racism is, you know what I mean? Like, they don't hate anyone yet, right? And I think as you get older, you harden in things.
Hopefully they'll continue not to hate anyone.
Well, right, but you like see people that choose to, right?
Right.
And so it's different when you're older. I mean, the thing they do in this movie too is this the juxtaposition is really forced down your throat, if you will, because she lives in the exact same building. The exact same design and layout of each room is the same as her rich person apartment, right? But when you go to Cabrini Green, we see how very different those two buildings can be. They talk about Chicago's like, oh, there was no barrier to keep people out. So they took what was supposed to be a project and made it rich person housing, right?
Right.
And so that mixed with them going in, and being afraid and seeing the graffiti literally across the front door of this mom who's just trying to do the best she can. Those are really powerful images, right? So not only when she walks through the giant Candyman mouth is it a very Wonderland moment, right? Like now we're down the rabbit hole. You could argue the moment she gets in her car and drives into the ghetto period, this is Helen just like, oh, bother. Like, what kind of tea party is this? Like,
well, I mean, I think that's the fascinating thing too is the first time her and Bernadette are going to go, she is like without abandon, not worried about danger. And it's like,
see, I don't know if it's that, because what she says, right, is like, do you think that those two would do it? And she says no, and she's like, exact. So I think she knows the danger. But this is another thing I don't know what you thought of. This one plays a lot more with Helen as the exploitative character.
Oh, totally.
Way more than I remembered as a kid. I actually kind of remembered her as like a do-gooder. And in this movie, watching it today, I was like, this lady is exploiting everyone.
It's really fascinating because it does kind of come with age where you're like, oh, wow, Helen is kind of a total douchebag. Like, from like the top of the movie, you're just like, oh, like she's just trying to, like, it's interesting because the concept really is that she's just trying to outdo her husband, essentially. Yeah. And again, there's like a lot of this, like, sort of, her and her husband are kind of almost competitive in the way that they, like, she comes in all hot and pissed because he's teaching urban legends when she's like literally trying to write her semiotics paper on it.
And he comes in all hot and sticky. It's just a real bad relationship.
Yeah, it's not great. And again, like, dude, Xander Berkeley is one of my all-time favorite, like, haphazard white guys in movies because he's just always that guy. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. I feel like he's just constantly like, that guy might be trouble, or he's just someone's dad. You can never really tell. Yeah, right. Like, he's just always around.
He's the Yahtzee board game of whites. But no, but what's weird, right? Like, there were moments where I was stunned by this today. Because the really funny scene I saw was this, because I used to read it as almost romance, right? Like, oh, this is a gothic romantic ghost tale, right?
A little bit,
it's not that at all, though, because I think the mirror to me became way more important, especially watching part 2 today, where this movie plays an enormous amount with the image of self, right? Obviously, Candyman was destroyed of his self-image because he started to think that he was accepted and fit in with the world because he thought it was a true meritocracy, right? I've done well. I have this skill, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I can fall in love with a girl. Not so much, right? Then he's fucking jumped and brutalized, as we see in the film. And Helen has this too, right? Because the scene when the cleaning ladies tell her about this lady who died, is she's scrolling through the newspaper, right? The microfilm or whatever. She has this disgusting smile on her face. And they're playing this kind of jaunty, like, meet cute music, which feels really out of place with these big sweeping. I love Clive Barker movies, like Hellraiser. oh, it's like these big operatic themes.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
It makes you feel like you're watching this big opera. But that theme was kind of small and jaunty, and I was like, this fucking bitch. Like, this must be how her husband feels when he sees a new student in Gap jeans. You know what I mean? She is fucking pumped that this lady died. And then she starts going in, and like even something as little as that boy just exploiting the shit out of him, right? Like, oh, well,
right.
I mean, you could show me. He's like, I can't say anything, right? They'll kill me.
Right.
And then she's just like, well, if you're a fucking huge puss, I guess. And she incriminates this little boy into her fucking her thesis paper, knowing full well that he could suffer true consequences because of it. It becomes, and then obviously Candyman kind of foists that upon her later with the, you know, Anthony and all that stuff. But that playing with Helen is, because I don't know if I saw it as like a Pandora's box scenario or, you know, like an Icarus flying too close to the sun, but it never quite dawned on me enough when I was younger how Helen is kind of being punished for her own delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one way to put it. Like, to me, it's...
Like, doesn't she say when she gets jumped, like, we're going to get published? It's like, what the fuck?
I mean, that's like... But that, I mean, I feel like that's almost like this weird academic badge of honor she tries carrying.
Yeah.
Because, like, you think about it, too, and, like, later on, like, right before Candyman reveals himself in the parking lot, she's positively giddy. With a lot, like, with their, like she's still going with this. Like, the idea is that she's, like, what she's happy about, though, and this is, like, the thing that is really fascinating to me, is she's happy that she believes she's essentially proven this urban legend wrong.
Or
like,
in a way changed its form to where now she can bury Ponytail McButthole.
Right.
Which is her true mission.
Like, this is what ends up happening anyways. But, like, that I think is the kind of crazy thing, is she's excited that her thesis essentially is that, hey, we invent these things for ourselves. Like, it comes up earlier in the movie, like when they're on their way out to Cabrini Green for the first time, and Bernadette and her literally stop the car and they're talking about it, and she's like, she brings it up. Like, she's a skeptic until that moment in the parking lot, because you see the fear in her eyes. But, like, up until that point, even after hearing the stories, getting beaten, like all kinds of shit, she's a skeptic the entire time. And it starts right in that car when she says people's lives are so terrible in Cabrini Green that they're willing to make up urban legends to explain away, like, these mythic creatures to explain away the horrors of their lives. And I'm like, that to me that's mythology in and of itself. Again, like, this movie has such layers and depth, and much more. It's so much deeper than I ever remember it being, and so much more interesting too.
Well,
like,
if you dig in on what you were just saying, right, to your point of, like, them writing a mythology or accusing the people of Cabrini Green, when they meet the mother, right, and she comes out with their dog and lets him in, she's like, let me guess, we're all bad people, we're all doing drugs. So they've had to make their own myths to explain how Cabrini Green can happen, right, without a Candyman, right? So
totally.
The mom kind of calls him out, like, you know, you fucking people, you only come down here to exploit us or say that something's bad, and, you know, it's not your fault, right? Very much how they think Candyman's used. So it is this weird constant layering and this is why I think the Candyman drop is really fascinating, because it comes a little later in the movie than you may think, right? We get the opening scene that takes place in my home state of Indiana, right? With the leather-bound bad boy, Ted Raimi.
Yeah, can we talk real quick? I just want to say, I got to give Bernard Rose credit for making Ted Raimi a badass, which, again, never thought was possible. I think it was
her previous boyfriend was a bad boy, so she got, like, the fucking Dollar General version.
Yeah, like,
and she's like, I'm going to go straight to Candyman
guy who buys his leather jacket at Kohl's.
Some
like,
forbidden acts in the... Because I was like, that's a weird... I was like, I don't know if that was in Tiger Beat that month or what, like where you get the idea for Candyman foreplay. Hey, let's bend over, lather up, and then just say the name of some other persons that we wish was here instead of us as we look at ourselves in the mirror in shame.
Right. Again, again, the Ted Raimi as a bad boy thing was truly inspired stuff. It's one of my all-time favorite castings. I had to point that out real quick.
But that scene is
was the
wild
funniest
too.
thing.
Because yeah,
to your point.
Yeah, because Ted Raimi goes down and just gets all fucking splayed out on the couch like, yeah.
Oh yeah, drinking that beer. He's like, sorry, I'm gonna drink this.
Or he
this
nutted
Michelob
faster
Ultra.
than Michael Myers' brother. We don't know, or Michael Myers' sister's boyfriend. We don't know for sure which happened. But Ted Raimi looked loose. Maybe he already got it in. And next thing you know, the blood just gagooshing from the ceiling. And then they're just like, oh, and Candyman killed a baby. So you're like, whoa! You're like, this guy's coming in hot. And then we don't really see him for a long time. And the movie starts playing that he's not real. We see the imitator Candyman. You're like, all right, maybe they're setting us up. And his intro is fucking gorgeous. And to me, it's what separates him in this movie, which is he stands far away, right? When we see him in the mirror retellings, he's always right on you. He stands pretty far away. He's like, be my victim. He's asking her, which is strange. And then he's like, I am the writing on the wall. You have made people not believe in me. So now I must spill innocent blood, right? So there is this, because that's the other weird thing. Helen already said his name earlier in the movie.
Yes.
Right? So he came in, or she called him. He didn't come to her then. Maybe you could say he was already luring her, because that was another thing I noticed. So he's in the reflection when she's in the Candyman room taking pictures.
Right.
Is that when he started following her, or when she said his name 5 times, right? They don't really hint, but you get the idea that it's weird because it feels like he didn't want her, and she just kept fucking pushing him.
I mean, I think he did want her. I think you can find out much later why, but at the same time, like, I think he did want her. He's biding his time, though. Like, to
his
me,
exact line, right, was, you were not content with the story, so I was obliged to. Also, Candyman just speaks like a true fucking badass. Like, every line he has in this movie is like a poetic chef kiss. Like, I love the writing for him. And then, the other weird thing is he says, without these things, right, the writing on the wall and this, that, I'm nothing. So it almost as if he's like, bitch, I gave you the stories. You had everything you needed. And you just kept coming. You just kept, because in a way, right, she's taking another hand. She's taking his life force again and using it for her own good. And this is where the movie gets really cool. I think this is a part that often gets washed over. His plan for the rest of the movie is to turn her into him.
Yeah.
Like, he's making his own Candyman now, which is wild, because it never dawns on me. It's like, imagine the urban legends that crop up after Helen's adventure, right? We see at the end of the movie when everyone's walking to her funeral and they have that angelic mural. You're like, she is her own hero now.
Yeah.
And we get a hint that she gets to go on doing what she wants too. So I think really a cool turnaround.
Right. And I think that's probably the thing that makes me the most sad that we're not going to get to see Candyman this year, the Nia DaCosta movie. But, like, because I have a feeling we would get so much more of that in this new one. But I love this. I love that this sort of, like, it changes from that, like, eternal love thing. Because that's the thing I do like about Clive Barker movies, is there are occasionally, like, echoes of eternity through the stories. And, like, there is this sort of weird gothic romance thing going on a lot of the time. But I love that it instead turns into take upon the mantle, like, take up my mission, because it is like, it is sort of this, it does feel that way. Like, there is a little bit of that going on, and it feels that way when the bees swarm and they kiss and that kind of shit. Like, I feel that that's what the presence is meant to be, is like, you must keep this going. Like, not just continue my legend, but you have to keep this yourself.
Well, I think she becomes a part of it, right? So instead of just him, it's now this, he drove her to become this killer. It's very much like Slender Man, right? Like, Slender Man obviously jocked a lot of what it is off of the Pied Piper and Candyman. It's kind of this same thing, this forbidden character, that if we can somehow tap a little bit of what they have, right? So Helen wants to tap in and steal it for herself. Barry Ponytail McDouche Nugget and become fucking rich and famous and be all over the place, right? get a boyfriend who's not like a 5 who cheats on her all day long.
Right, yeah.
So she's trying to steal and co-op Candyman, and then he co-ops her, right?
Right.
And it's just this really cool... Again, it's this... As he was caught, now he's capturing her. And it's not just... Because, again, this is what's different, right? If that's Michael Myers, knife. If it's Jason Voorhees, machete. If it's Freddy, maybe you're in an N64 game, and then you get got, right? Like, they have their methods, but it always ends in that. This is so much different. Because... Candyman taps into that thing that maybe Freddy's Dead played with a little bit, right? Which is, what happens when you just slaughter the world and it's gone? Like when Freddy's stuck in that pocket universe and he's killed all the kids and it's like that creepy Roseanne and Tom Arnold carnival, right? And you're like, oh, good God, that's a fate worse than hell. Freddy really is tortured Bugs Bunny. This one kind of gets into that where it feels like the Candyman is a tragic figure because maybe he doesn't want to do these things. But without it, he will become nothing, right? I think as he starts saying it, he has these beautiful lines, which is, I can't remember what he said. It's like, you can live life without suffering. All you have left is my desire for you, right? There's just these really fucking cool lines, where he's letting her make these choices and she just keeps fucking up. I mean, I guess she doesn't make a lot of decisions after that, but when she wakes up in that apartment, you're like, she didn't choose that, but she did choose to go there and start poking around, right?
Yeah,
Bernadette kept saying, let's leave. So by proxy, she kind of picked the target. The woman she was trying to exploit, knowing that she could become a target like the child, is now a target. I don't know. What do you make of this turn when she wakes up in the bloody hotel room?
I mean, from a storytelling perspective, for me, it's about setting Helen on the path of reinvigorating the story of the Candyman. Mm. Like, she is responsible in more ways than one for coming up with a rational explanation for the irrational. And I think that's the thing that makes horror movies great in general. Like, especially movies like this, like Candyman, Halloween, any movie we've really watched this month, like, everybody wants to find the rational explanation. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever wants to have to explain things as just like, oh, it's just a thing that happens. Like everybody always needs an explanation.
Yeah.
And that is the scariest thing about something like Candyman, is when you cannot explain something. So for Helen to wake up in that situation and not be able to explain it, but simply know, but then like she takes a step further. And this is the thing that struck me this time too, was she takes that step further and fucking takes that cleaver to that woman's arm. And you're like, that's a decision right there. That's a huge decision right there.
Well, in her mind, it's like, does she think that lady chopped her own dog's head off? And like,
could
Jesus
be, but
Christ.
I mean, I would go further than that though. Like, I'd say like, it's almost this, you return to this sort of baser instinct of like, kill or be killed. And this woman was more upset that her baby, obviously her baby is gone and the crib's covered in blood. Understandably, she's like, hey, there's a white lady in here. What the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
So
as the
she's
kids
curious.
would say, that's not a chill night, bro. That would not be a chill night to see that.
Not a chill night.
No,
not
but
at all.
It's so funny.
But it's fascinating to me.
And it's kind of cool, too, because it operates in this, I'll give you your exact wish, which is now you get to live in the story
now
you're chasing,
you live
right?
within the legend itself.
Yeah,
like, I think that's the crazier thing. I think
it's
that's
rad,
what
though,
it is,
but because you can see when she's getting interrogated, they keep being like, you're sick, answer the question. And she's just, what? She keeps blinking like, what?
Yeah.
Not
she
me.
doesn't
What?
understand. And again, like, Virginia Madsen's amazing in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I fucking love her and everything, but she's particularly wonderful in this because
Indeed.
she does such a great job of disarming us in a lot of ways that, like, I don't think we expected to be. Because again, you're right. Like, when she's being interrogated, her sort of like, I think it's not like she doesn't believe it because she's seen it. She's aware of what's happened. She's seen the Candyman himself. I think what it is more is disbelief in that she has no control over it. There is no control left. Like, all this control that she thought she found with this explanation of the weird is gone, eradicated in a moment. And not only that, she now has to contend with the fact that reality has set in along with this weirdness
Yeah.
So now
When
she
you
has
are
to
the
contend with
rationalist
both.
who finds yourself in irrational times, that's a hard place.
Right.
Well, one of the things they do I love is they do that old like Dracula Bela Lugosi lighting, where like
Yeah.
whenever
Oh,
Candyman talks
on
to
the
her, it's
eyes?
just on her eyes,
Yeah.
right? Like she has a
Yeah.
secret, she sees a world that we don't see, and that's really cool, right? So we get that. She wakes up in this fucking opening scene from Dark City, hacks that bitch. Now she's in jail, right? And it's just this really flat interrogation room writing. The detective who was her friend is like, "Oh, you helped us put away the underlord guy. Cool." Now he's just like talking to her like she is a non-existent, right?
Right.
And she keeps blinking her eyes and like holding them tight, right? And to me, it was like she's trying to open her eyes from that dream light that she had before. And I was like, so beautifully done. And then the Candyman keeps coming back to her in those moments where it feels like she wants to hear what he has. Oh, like leaning in. It's a really beautiful little motif. But that scene in the interrogation room where she just keeps trying to open her eyes after she thinks she's gone through the indignities that are beneath her, in her fancy version of that apartment. It was just lovely. And that's what I mean. Those little elements are what make this so awesome, man. And
I agree.
the Candyman continuing to kind of hunt her becomes a little scarier because now instead of just this, you're fighting a murderer, not only are you losing all your loved ones and people close to you, but it just becomes impossible to explain that you're not the murderer, right?
Yeah.
Like when Bernadette gets killed, it is a gut-wrenching moment.
Oh my God.
Horrible.
But see, that's like this is the thing I love the most about this, especially on this viewing, is putting her in the seat of we all know it's the Candyman. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's the thing that I love the most is like the audience is aware and we're all screaming it through the screen and we're trying desperately to help this woman, but we realize like this viewing particularly, like Helen's kind of brought this on herself, man.
Well,
like,
even that moment, she kind of pauses like she can't speak. And when she calls out to Bernadette, it's so weak that it made me be like,
she knows.
Oh my God, does she want Bernadette to come in? Because she has like 2 or 3 of those moments where you're like, I think she could have done better. Like, that's definitely one of them, right? Candyman's like, I need you for a plan. You're part of my plan. And then she's like, Bernadette. It's like, scream, bitch. Like, don't answer. Don't say anything, right? Like, be cool. But no, she got Bernadette got. And when she sees Bernadette all ripped up, it's just agonizing because she's already in handcuffs. And it gives you, this movie plays with one of those things that always works on me in a horror movie, which is where you see people who we know are being honest treated as if they're insane and just like bound and locked. That is horrifying to me.
Well, and I think that's the thing I like the most about Helen's predicament is she's not insane, but everything happening around her is. Like, the supernatural is the supernatural, but because we can't explain it. So imagine being someone rational trying to explain something completely irrational.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that makes the Candyman mythos that much more terrifying is it's not explainable. All it is all you have is the result of the unexplainable. And that, to me, is what makes the presence of the Candyman himself so much more terrifying is it's not like Freddy Krueger to me. Like Freddy Krueger is oddly explainable in a certain way to all these people. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, Freddy Krueger. Yeah, we burned that guy alive. No wonder he's back, of course. Like this one is sort of this like nebulous. And again, I know that we've talked about this already, but like the thing that I kept coming back to watching this movie is, of course, all these hoity-toity people would forget about this. And not only that, would forget about this horrible injustice, this horrible indignity done to not just a black man, but an artist who, like you said, believed in the meritocracy of the society he had lived in. And so for all these people to not only like not believe in it, but also to chalk it up to legend probably makes that even not more frustrating, but that much more terrifying and that much more hard to explain when you have to explain the unexplainable. I absolutely feel bad for Helen, but I also again, kind of feel like she brings it on herself because she literally constantly, at least at the beginning of the movie, puts herself in that position.
Well, I mean, that becomes the scarier thing when you think about the movie from a distance, right? Which is all she had to do was just keep being a rich white lady.
Yeah.
And she's fine. Because Candyman only exists for people who believe in him.
Yeah.
And then once you do, he will destroy you or someone close to you and leave you as this human wreckage to spread his web, right? So there's a more randomness and tragic part of this because the community that he's a part of remembers the indignation he suffered and the crime committed against him. And for that, they are unfairly targeted and exploited and destroyed by him, right? And, you know, and that's a pretty powerful statement when you watch this movie, especially today. You're like, fuck, man. Like, just because they remember how wrong it was, they're more likely to be done in by him than, you know, but like fucking butthole ponytail guy at the restaurant. It's like, I did that 10 years ago. And I'm fine. I'm still here being a big pretentious dickhole. Right? He's fine.
Right, but I mean...
But that lady who lives next door and just knows that Candyman is a real threat, she's the one who loses her kid for 6 weeks.
Right. Well, because, again, like, it's the belief in something that is unexplainable that I think, again, induces that fear. And that's the thing that is most fascinating to me about the movie itself is everyone who should believe doesn't believe. Like, everyone who, like, literally, like Ponytail McDickhead at the dinner table literally is like, oh, yes, of course, I read a paper on that years ago.
Candyman country. You're like,
but again,
cool,
you're looking at that guy and you're like, yeah, but you didn't go do the research. You literally read about it in a book and then pontificated on it for 20 hours.
That would have been a great scene. Him just walking through those holidays.
But like Bernadette and Helen going and experiencing that. And again, Helen doesn't believe literally until the physical act of violence is committed against her. And even then she has trouble
once
believing.
She's suffering, then she's like, oh.
Once she suffers, she decides to believe. But even then she's skeptical. It's not until he literally has to present himself and say, you have fucked up my shit. Now you're going to help me get it back.
Well, I'm saying until her shit is fucked up, which is when she goes to the insane asylum. That's when she's like, this is probably real. Because I think even when she gets out of jail the first time, she's still in disbelief all the way that this was Candyman. She's still in disbelief that her husband was fucking a graduate student. You're like, there's a lot of lying to ourselves going on here.
Oh, man. How's about that in the very beginning of the movie? She calls him out and like, they're fucking. All right, just move on. Just don't move on from it, though.
Yeah, or just
lets
move
it go.
out. That guy seems like he sucks. Like, do better.
Yeah, he's a total dick. He literally like did the thing you didn't want him to. Just do like you're Virginia Madsen. Go do something else.
That's true.
Jeez,
that's true. Well, when she got out and came back to his apartment, I literally wrote the pun like, "Guess Dingus gets off the hook."
Oh,
but he didn't, which is even better. But but no, there's a line the Candyman said, which I thought was really cool today. The what was the exact line? He said, I exist as rumor, and it is a blessed condition, right?
Right.
I thought that was amazing, because I kept asking myself the question, why does the Candyman want to exist in this form, right? Because the thing is, they give Candyman a bit of a soft edge, right? Where it seems like he was the tragic victim of this horrific abuse, and now he has to keep committing these heinous crimes against the people that don't deserve it, just to spread his name, right? So I spent the first probably half, 2/3 of the movie asking myself why Candyman, this murdering ghost or whatever. Maybe like Pinhead, though. Hero to some, maybe. I don't know.
Sure.
Why does he keep fighting to keep this rumor going? Why? Because he says it's a blessed condition, but that's not what I see on the screen there, Candyman. So it got to this point of, and I think you see it a little bit in Helen, where they're trying to tell us that a person can be so broken and so hollowed out that maybe that complete lack of anything becomes this unfillable chasm. What did you make of this? I thought it was a really cool idea. Because, again, I would say what separates Candyman is this little bit of empathy we can have for him that you just don't get out of any of the major characters, right? Like, I can't think of one. Like, not Michael, not Jason, definitely not Freddy because he was a fucking pedophile before he got burned. Not the Leprechaun, not Chucky. He was a serial killer. Like, not Leatherface. I guess he got abused into eating concert goers, but still.
Did he?
Yeah.
And besides, isn't he doing us all a favor by ridding the world of hippies?
All right, so maybe Leatherface. Maybe Leatherface.
As far as I'm concerned, Leatherface is actually a PSA for don't be a hippie.
You like the Grateful Dead? Then we're grateful you're dead. No. That's Leatherface's t-shirt under his apron. No, I'm just, yeah, thank you. Oh, you should have read my jokes on that 10 years ago. But that's what I was, it's a weird thing to ask, to have your audience ask, why does the Candyman want this game to go? Why keep being the rumor and the story? Why not just let go of all this fucking pain and agony that he still seems to suffer?
I mean, I don't know. I think this is a weird thing to say about a movie like this, but I feel like the explanation lies within the eye of the beholder. Like, to me,
maybe
that's like sort of the beauty of a movie like this. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, yes, why would an entity such as the Candyman decide, you know what? I'm going to hold on to this and just sort of be pissed for like ever. I'm going to be a vengeful, pissed off spirit.
It makes sense that he's
till the
pissed,
end of my
but
day.
Like here, a scene that we talked about right before we started, the Dick Ripper scene.
Yeah.
So this is one of those scenes that I think gets overlooked a lot, but is truly one of the more horrific scenes I've ever seen in a movie. So just
Hardcore.
a little boy who has disabilities, it seems like. His mom sends him away because he's being disruptive, whatever. He just needs to use the restroom. In doing that, and I don't know that they ever show or say that he called Candyman on himself, Candyman reaches up from inside the toilet and rips off his genitalia and leaves the kid bleeding on the floor. The other little kid in the modern time is pretty much like, better off dead. Some things you can't fix. Just scars and maims this boy. Now, you could take this as one of these retelling stories, very much like Ted Raimi, Arthur Fonzarelli flashback. Maybe it didn't happen, but it seems like something occurred. The bathroom was marked in really, really thick fecal drawing. There were bees in that toilet. Mm-hmm. I guess I meant maybe you could fault an unreliable narrator, but anyways, let's assume this happened. So this gets into what is one of the harder things about Candyman for me. That they kind of course correct in Candyman too. Victims that don't seem like they've done anything wrong.
Right.
I guess you just call his name, but again, we start getting into this. People die who don't call his name. Bernadette never called his name.
Right. I mean, I think that he says that like it's the first opening. It's the innocent blood must be shed. Like, I think that there's but see, now that's so Candyman having to destroy these innocents is, I think, one of the harder things in the movie because there's no catharsis watching him kill a lot of these people. Well, there's no catharsis in that sense, but this is the other thing too, and I think this is the harder thing for a lot of. That's
what he says when the bee swarm comes up. What is blood if not for shedding?
Right, and I think that's the thing it's the hardest thing about the Candyman to really kind of like grasp, because in my opinion there is a lot that's very tragic about Candyman. I think that Candyman's existence is very tragic. I think Candyman's past is very tragic. I think his future is very tragic because Day of the Dead is Day of the Dead. But nevertheless, I'm not sure. Candyman is this character. There is a lot of tragedy. So to me, the shedding of innocent blood is almost, it's weird. It's sort of almost a misnomer because I feel like if I was the it's hard to say if I was the Candyman, but I'm not sure anyone's innocent.
But this is
in a lot of regards.
This is because if I'm the Candyman and someone gave me that name as they're murdering me with bees and chopped my hand off and fucking took my love away just because I fell in love with a girl of a different class, a different race that I was not allowed to be a part of. I feel like my first ghostly mission would be like, well, I'm gonna murder those fucking pilgrims that we see in part
True.
2, right? Like, that's a pretty understandable thing. Maybe their descendants, maybe all their cousins they fucked. I'm going for that group, right? This splash effect, right? This kind of constant, just fucking aimless pain, right? And again, I think maybe today, Candyman, it's weird because it feels like the movie that would be most prescient right now with this true crime wave and this social media,
Absolutely.
like the things people will do to get fucking famous online. I'm sure the new movie will dive into a lot of that, right? But is that the biggest sin? Is just like you want to take something from him too? Like all of us that call his name are taking our own little pound of flesh. But even that is pretty kind of a philosophical point to make. It is hard to watch. Like, here's a scene that really fucked me up. That little boy who Helen already kind of tricked into taking her to the bathroom. At the end, right before that bonfire starts, he's just ready. And when Helen triggers the thing, he goes, he's here. And just knows to get his gasoline and his fire stick out. So we have to assume that the Candyman came to that kid and said, hey, I'm going to rip your dick off unless you start these fires when the sign is there. That is an extra nefarious level that they've added on. There's this whole why he keeps it going, right? Or even if he can control it, maybe that's more the point. Really fast. It was really fascinating to me this time.
Well, I think that's the thing about the Candyman when he says, I am a rumor. Like, I exist in this way. Like, to me, to exist in a way that you are a bedtime story you tell, like, to exist in a way where you're a bedtime story you tell your children to fuck with them, to, like, tell them to be good. Like, I see the value in that in the Boogeyman. Absolutely. Like, that is what
you do to Hank every night?
Absolutely.
Better go to bed. Hey, you're going to get Candyman, Hank.
If you don't go to bed, you're going to get Candyman.
You just start dropping little cartoon bees, like from Jerry Seinfeld's Bee Movie on him. He's like,
no, I'll just call Candyman like my kid's being a shit.
Well, you said it twice, dude, and you can probably see your own reflection. No more.
This isn't a mirror.
Anything you can see your face on. In part 2, the guy gets killed by his own book cover.
Yeah,
anyways, neither here nor there.
Regardless, like, I think that's the thing.
Riddle me this. Did you understand at all what his plan was at the end?
I assumed it was to subsume Helen and make... always... Like,
which it felt like you already did with that amazing B shot, which was so fucking cool.
Awesome. But I always assumed, and my thought was Helen was meant to carry on and be the actual... She was supposed to be Candyman after him.
She was going to be the new Candyman.
Right. He was supposed to put himself to rest, and then she becomes part of the legend and the new Candyman. That's my assumption always, was that, because that's the mural at the end. That's the flame hair at the end. That's the idea.
See, that was her as an angel because she saved him from Candyman, I thought he said, our crimes will be written on walls and bathrooms. So I thought she was going to be his way to expand out from where his ashes were supposedly laid in Cabrini Green.
Right.
Which in a weird way, you're like, even if they get burned in that thing, like he's kind of more corporeal. She hits him with her own hook. And then Anthony's in the fire pit. It gets weird. Because my thing is, she already is the Candyman at that point, right? So very much like those two teenage girls in Wisconsin when they started stabbing their fucking friend in the woods. And they're like, we wanted to go to Slender Mansion. They had already done their part and made Slender Man more famous than he ever could have been on a fucking wiki site. So Helen had already become, because he even says, we're both already dead.
Right.
So it's weird. Also, let me ask you this. Do you think this new Nia DaCosta one is just going to explain what the Candyman was feeding Anthony for 6 weeks? Good Lord. That did not look like a sanitary hook to have a toddler sucking on.
I do believe that should be covered. Again, we've asked Nia DaCosta if she would come on the pod, so
we got a lot of ask. We'll be
got a lot of questions for Nia DaCosta for this one. Look, ultimately, again, I've always assumed that this movie is about the progression of urban legend, and also about the examination of what it is that mythology does to us personally. So I always assumed that Helen would literally just carry on and she'd be the hooked Candyman from then on, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because she kind of, in a way, has gone through what Candyman went through to some degree.
Sure.
Different circumstances, but similar path, right? You know, everything taken from her unfairly. And then instead of being Candyman, existing as this blessed rumor, right? This scary, ghostly figure, right?
Right.
The Candyman and Helen running amok through, bathrooms everywhere.
Totally.
She stabs him and chooses a different path and climbs out. So she takes some control over her legend, right? Maybe seeing how pointless it is both ways, it's enough for her to do that one good deed and exist as that angelic mural and have those people at her funeral, right? Because even the narrative set on Helen when she dies, she will be the lady that murdered a bunch of fucking people because she thought Candyman was real. She's already been co-opted. He already won. But in the same way Candyman unfairly targets the people of Cabrini Green, she is held up because they were there and witnessed. So maybe it's this, her finally taking control of what matters, right?
Right.
If you can do one real world deed, that's better than all the fucking stories, because it's pointless.
Perhaps. I mean, ultimately it's about, I feel like it ends with like Helen trying to control her narrative. Like,
yeah, until the last scene, and then we're like, oh, Helen is not doing well. All that baby saving did not. Although, who didn't want that guy to die? Because he's just like, oh, Helen, I cheated on you, and I didn't love you. And,
again, to be fair, Xander Berkeley, maverick bad guy of any movie ever.
He's like, oh, now she wants to live here. The thing I liked most about that scene was that lady, his girlfriend, was just like, oh, man, the post-funeral mourning phase, what do we need? How about just the tittiest shirt I can possibly muster? I was like, were you just standing in front of the freezer for like 45 fucking minutes while he cried in the bathroom?
God bless the 90s, man.
Yeah, I was just like, is that a shirt that, I mean, I've had a wife for a long time now.
Yeah.
I've seen women in their leisure wear and their nightwears, and I've never seen anything like that. Like, that is a straight up Revenge of the Nerds extra casting.
That's the thing I love about like early 90s movies, especially horror movies, is again, like there's so many articles of clothing that have never existed before and will never exist again that find their way into the lexicon of movies like this. And certainly titty popping shirt from Mistress Number 5. That's the one.
It's just a straight up white shirt. It's so
By
cold.
the way,
but it's also why put her in that shirt while she's just like, this fucking piece of shit?
By the way, at the beginning of the movie, when he introduces all three of those women, I'm like, all he's doing is listing off the girls he's fucked in this class. I fucked her. I fucked her. I fucked her. I'm a huge sleazebag. Hey, wife, how you doing?
That's why I was so mad he got off the hook. And then he was on the fucking
Stop.
hook.
Stop.
Oh, but it was cool, man, because he said Helen's name one too many times. And she got, because that was a fun throwback, too, because when she came.
I liked that.
From the mental hospital, right? After Candyman fucking Peter Pan's out the window, caw, and she escapes. That's a weird double scene, because that's the one where she looks, she's like, I'll prove it. And she says it, knowing what's going to happen. She knows that doctor's going to get murdered. And he didn't do anything wrong except for drug her for 1 month. But she's a murderer, multiple murderer. And then when she goes into the apartment, and they're both terrified of her. And she's not a real threatening looking person, kind of a raggedy lady. And she's just like, what's wrong? See something you're afraid of? And you see that smile for a second that she's quite enjoying doing this. And so to see that's where she ends up is actually kind of badass.
Yeah, man. Look, I think ultimately this movie's a wonderful cautionary tale for academics who think they know everything, for one. But
hey,
also,
Vice News reporters, watch Candyman. Be fucking careful.
But I mean, for me, I do think of all the movies we've watched this month, this is my favorite. I fucking love Candyman. And I think it's one of those movies that's It's a modern classic. It deserves all the praise, but ultimately it also deserves a lot of analytics and a lot of things that much smarter people than us can sit here and talk about. But
no way, we're like that ponytail guy. We're super smart and full of ourselves.
Ah, yes, of course. Of course.
We love those kind of guys.
Yeah, honestly, like, I just think this movie is beyond fascinating. Like, there's so many great things about it. It starts with Clive Barker. We have this amazing Philip Glass score, which we talked about briefly at the beginning of the show. Like, Philip Glass scored this movie. And apparently it's like one of the most requested things he ever gets. He's like, I have made money off this movie for like the entirety of my career. More than anything else, this guy is Philip Glass. Like, again, sets the mood for this movie that is this huge psychological drama about what it is about mythology that actually scares us. Is it us or is it the myth themselves? And I think what's interesting about Candyman is it is a convalescence of both, really. We are important enough to the myth itself.
Yeah, I mean, it plays with us as the monster. It has a real monster. It plays with the sins of the past coming back to haunt us. This constant fight for having to redefine who we are, which can be really terrifying when you start talking about insanity. And just a really empathetic monster. Helen, our main lead actress, gets as much to do as any lead actress in a horror movie I think I've ever seen. So it's just this mix of, it has so many ways with which you can examine it, right? It really is like a swarm of bees. There's so many little things to look at and pluck off the body of this film. And they're all just, sweet as honey. They're all sweet as honey, you know what I mean? This whole movie is just one little bowl of honeycombs. It's a giant chef's bowl of honeycombs. Yeah, I love it so much. Like a Honey Nut Cheerio. Hey. I don't know what happened there at the end.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I don't know. I was trying to channel my inner dinner table guy. See what it's like. All right, guys, that's it for Candyman. I hope you love this movie as much as we do. Truly, this was one of the probably like 10 movies that we wrote down when we started this thing. We couldn't wait to get to. I'm so glad we finally did. Join us tomorrow as we dive into Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. Take a trip down to New Orleans. So we're going to go visit the whitest people in New Orleans and see what's up with the Candyman in part 2. Thank you guys for spending so much time with us this month. We appreciate how many of you are doing every day with us. Please take a second, leave a rating and review. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. Find us on all your socials. Email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Share us on your socials. Give us a shout out. Help us be your victim. I don't know. I kind of went a little macho. Man, my voice game got...
Great Tony Todd impression or not? I'm not sure.
No, I don't know. I got nothing. I was going to try, but it just came out as Macho Man. Oh, yeah. What if the indicator is just, be my victim, brother?